What's up, everybody? John from Florida Moto Talk here with Tristan, coming at you again with another video. It's been a while since we've seen you, but this one's going to be a short and sweet one as we end the 2024 MotoGP season. How you doing, Tristan? It's been a while since we've been back up here in the podcast format.
Yeah, it's been a good minute. We've been too busy, and we were trying to get this out the weekend of the championship finishing, but between you at the track and then me traveling for work and stuff like that, we just couldn't pull it off. So we're a little bit behind on this, but hopefully we still have something of interest and value to talk about.
Oh, yeah, there's lots to talk about, and we're just going to hop into it, man. We know that people have short attention spans this day and age with all the YouTubes and the TikToks and the IGs and everything else that's going on. So let's just hop into it, man. What do you think about the season? 2024, it's over now. It's done. What are we going to do for the next freaking 5 months?
I don't know, man. It's depressing coming home from work on a Saturday, not having a sprint race and qualifying to watch. So luckily the seasons keep getting longer and longer. So the winter break keeps getting shorter and shorter. But yeah, so much to talk about this year. Even before the end of the championship, a lot of people were saying this was the year that was going to be marked and remembered for all the mistakes that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we knew it was going to be a big season for sure. I mean, just the way that the stars were aligning, right? I mean, you got Jorge Martin, Pecco Bagnaia, and then you got Marc Marquez on the Gresini Ducati bike. It was all in the writing, man. It was in the stars. We knew it was coming, and we knew that it was going to come down to the final round of the season, which coincidentally was the Solidarity GP, right? Where it all came afoot.
Yeah, with a pretty big gap to try to close in, and all the conversation about, is Bastianini going to help? Is Espargaro going to help Martin? Like, what's Marquez going to do? Yada, yada, yada. And in the end, it basically just came down to the two main guys, fighting it out, and Martin doing what he had to do and Pecco doing what he had to do, and the gap was there.
Yeah, and that was a pretty big point of discussion too, right? Will Bastianini get into the fight? Which, I mean, I suppose he did, but I guess people didn't know whether he was gonna, keep racing for himself or start racing for Bagnaia. But the way things are working out next season, yeah, I mean, Bastianini was always going to race for himself. Whether whether it helped his teammate Pecco Bagnaia or not, Bastianini's going to do what he needed to do to get himself the result, just like Marc Marquez. So, fortunately, we didn't see any sort of that nonsense going on. Other riders interfering. Well, let me slow down because we'll probably talk about Aleix Espargaro too. But we didn't see major interfering. Going on with the championship. So I mean, we really got to see just a proper fight all the way through.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, the talk of who's going to help who and yada yada, that was so overblown to begin with because those two have just been so untouchable all year. Mm-hmm. So if they wanted it to be a head-to-head showdown, they could have recreated Malaysia. But I think at this point, with the gap he had, Martin knew just do what he had to do, and Pecco knew he had to go out there and just kick ass, and that was that. So I think it was a good thing that in the end it didn't come down to too many shenanigans. But when you get down to it, what it did come down to was how the two of them basically completely changed their styles this year. So last year, Martin was the win it or bin it guy, and it didn't work out for him. And Pecco was the guy who was just happy to keep coming home in second. And then all of a sudden this year, admittedly, I am a Pecco fan, and I loved the added aggression at the beginning of this year and was like, okay, this is what he needs to do to, stick with Martin. But all of a sudden, complete opposite to last year, Pecco became the guy who was inconsistent and kept making mistakes, and it cost him the world championship this year.
Yeah, and what we're seeing now is that, it's it seems like it's harder, right, to keep that number one plate, right? I feel like you definitely have more pressure. If you're the defending champion, you definitely have more pressure going into the next season as opposed to the guy that's challenging you. I feel like there's a lot less stress, right? That expectation's not there at that point, right? So
Yeah, and
Martin
I don't.
really, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say I don't think Pecco wanted to win again by playing it safe. I think he wanted to win in a more dominant fashion, and in the end, it didn't work out that way.
Yeah, and the worst thing for him was, Jorge Martin's maturity level. Um,
Hmm.
if you're going into a season, right, there's the way I see it, there's three things that you need to win. Um, Skill, obviously. Now in 2024 and beyond, got to have a good bike. Like those days of Mark Marquez hopping on the Honda are gone. Um, the skill has to match the bike, and then the third one is obviously luck. Got to have a little bit of luck too, um, which Martin had because he kept the bike upright. We didn't see a lot of those forced errors that he forced on himself. We didn't see him make bad tire calls like we've seen in the past that lost him points, like Phillip Island last year in 2023. Um, he was just a more mature rider. He's chasing Pecco. Um, his riding was just next level, and you could see that he was focused on the championship all season, as he should be. But man, I mean, for it to even be that close, I mean, just hats off to Pecco still. I mean, either one of these guys, we would have been good with either one of them being the champion because, I mean, that's how close it is between the two of them. It could have went either way.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can look back on. Like, I can't remember what race it was, but when Martin pulled in to change tires and thought it was going to keep raining and cost himself a bunch of points in that one Grand Prix, if he hadn't done that, he would have locked up the championship before the last race. If Pecco and Alex Marquez hadn't run into each other in Aragon, and honestly, even as a Pecco fan, I can't say who was at fault in that one. I do think that was just a racing incident. But if that hadn't happened, Pecco would have been world champion. So there's just so many things that happened this year, and that's why it was like the championship of mistakes. Was for a long time through like the mid-season, it seemed like no one wanted to lead. Every time one of them would get ahead, they'd then throw the bike down the road, and then they just kept flip-flopping in the championship. So I've got like some weird numbers to throw at you. So Pecco lost 70 points while leading through mistakes over the season, like unforced errors. Jorge lost 50 through unforced errors. So a 10-point difference in the championship. Let's say they both threw 60 points down the road. Pecco's your world champion again because he had more race wins. Pecco won 11 Sunday Grand Prix, but he also threw it down the road in a bunch of them. Jorge this year got second place on Sunday 10 times, and then he won on Sunday 3 times. So, and then if you count Saturdays and Sundays, Pecco won 45% of the races for the year. But then he also DNF'd 20%. So he just, like, he full-blown pulled a Jorge Martin and completely became the win it or bin it guy. And I don't know. I don't know if, like I said earlier, he was just so focused on winning in dominant fashion that he kind of lost sight of the fact that sometimes you just have to come second, or third, or fourth, or fifth. I don't know if something about the GP24, made it a little more unpredictable while you were leading or something. It would just go with no warning. But we didn't see it from Jorge, so it just really seemed like they did a complete switch of personalities in between last season and this season.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, a lot of that's the pressure, right? It's going to be more pressure on Pecco trying to defend that title. he knows how important it is to the team, how important it is to the company. I mean, how important it is to himself. I mean, what's the bonus that he gets? Right?
Yeah.
Forget what is the bonus, man? Something ridiculous. But man, I can't imagine. I can't even begin to imagine the type of pressure that's on these guys' shoulders going into every round. But I think that's why we see these unforced errors, right? It's just all it takes at this level is just a fraction of a second, right, to be distracted. You go 6 inches offline, and you're in the dirty part of the track. The bike goes down. I mean, literally losing concentration for that amount of time can cause you a race. And now we're seeing that it can cause you the championship as well. But is I mean, there would be so much on his mind, right? I mean, we saw Pecco crash the very last lap of a Grand Prix, right after
Yeah.
leading for the
Yeah,
entire
in
race, right?
Barcelona.
Yeah, you say, well,
Yeah.
how does that happen? That's how that happens. I mean, just right, they just got a little bit too relaxed, just a little bit unfocused, and then the bike goes sliding away. It's unreal what they do, but with Jorge, I mean, we've been hearing all season about him and how he has a sports psychologist now, and in the past we know that was something that he dealt with. Like the pressure was something that was really hard for him to deal with, and that held him back a lot of the time. And then you want to go out and win every single race because they know just how important the points are, and then you end up making these errors. But Jorge Martin, once again, I mean, if he's focusing on the end game, he handled it race by race. But when he needed to push, then he needed to push. When he didn't need to push, for example, the last round here in Catalunya again, he didn't push because he didn't have to. But I imagine there was a lot of people that thought he would, pull the pin and try to make a statement and challenge Pecco. He didn't need to do that, right? Could you imagine if he did and threw it down the road?
Well, as a Pecco fan, I was hoping you would, but that's a whole
Yeah.
other story.
Yeah, but like I said, from what we've been seeing all season, I mean, he's calm. He's doing what he needs to do. He's not thinking, in sharp contrast. He's not like Pedro Acosta, for example, right?
Yeah.
He's doing exactly what he needs to do to win. And I mean, we just saw that all come together in that last race. You finish ninth, I think it was. Finish ninth or better, and you win the race.
Yeah.
You win the championship. Why
Yeah.
is he going to push? There's nothing to prove at that point. There's nothing to prove at that point. You finish better than ninth and get that world title.
Yeah, I mean, in the end of the day, when you win the world championship, are you going to remember the sting of only winning 3 Sunday Grand Prix and your rival winning 11? Like, no, when you think about 2024, you're going to look at that trophy. You're going to look at that helmet with the special world champion graphics on it that's sitting on your shelf. Like, you're not going to think about, oh man, I should have won more races.
I know, and as you just said with the numbers, you don't have to win every race.
No.
Johan Mir showed us that many years ago. You don't have to win
Yeah.
every race,
Yeah.
man. There's still people right now that say that guy's still not a true champion. You know what I mean? But like, you don't have to win every race. You have to manage every race. Is really what it is. You don't have to. You don't have to podium every race. You just have to manage every race. If you get consistent points throughout the year, you'll have a good season. Mark Marquez has showed us this this year.
Well, and I mean, you go back to Aragon, like, I don't think 2023 Pecco has that crash with Alex Marquez. I think 2023 Pecco was a lot more patient and would have gone, screw it, I'm just going to take home the points. I'm not going to try to have this fight. Whereas 2024 Pecco, and you're probably right, the additional pressure,
Yep.
The media saying he's not the fastest rider, he's the most consistent rider. I think 2024 Pecco wanted to be the fastest rider and the world champion, and to finish first you must finish, and that's not conducive to always being the fastest rider.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, just consistency, having a level head, having that racecraft and just understanding. Like I said, I just my hats off to these guys with how much just mental processing power they have to to consider all these things in the middle of a race, right? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
example you gave with a Jorge Martin pitting early for the rain race. I mean, it's like impossible choices, right? That you have, you know, less than a minute to freaking make if you're on a freaking flyer of a lap. And just sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. That's where that luck comes into. I mean, you're not going to be the world champion without a little bit of luck. Had it continued raining for that race, then Jorge Martin would have been a hero, man.
yep,
It's a call you have to make. That's where the luck comes in. Being consistent all season, that's where the skill comes in. Not having any I don't think Jorge Martin had a mechanical all season. I can't remember one off the top of my head.
I don't think so. No.
That's where the bike portion comes in. Mechanics were on point. The bike was always set up. I mean, he looked comfortable pretty much everywhere, with a couple exceptions. But yeah, he had all the three keys to get it done. But yeah, hats off to these guys, because it's unreal. It's unreal to even be on the grid and in the points. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm loving this. What, 3 years in a row now? The championship's gone down to the last race, even with the introduction of sprint races. It's gone are the days where, qualifying between first and third, you could have a second and a half, and the World Championships decided 3-4 races before the end of the year. I think all the bikes and all the riders are so close to that limit now that there is no, to a degree, Jorge and Pecco walked away with it, but they did it together. There is no one guy is just going to take off with it anymore. It was Quartararo and Pecco, and then Jorge and Pecco the last 2 years. It's all just closed up so much.
Yeah, and I mean that's why greatest sport on earth, man. Because I mean these guys, we see it every race too. They never sort of just kind of accept defeat. We're seeing that even from most of the guys that we're not going to talk about Honda, but for most of the guys that are even struggling, I mean, they still have the fight in them. They still have the dog in them. When these guys are down, they don't give up most of the time. We're seeing that with Quartararo on the Yamaha. I mean, couple points, real strong finish to the season for him considering where they've been. But all these guys, I mean, they all just want to fight. They all want to win, and you see it every single weekend. Even if they have a bad result the previous weekend, they come back. And that was really that was Pecco's kind of theme for the whole season, really, if you ask me. Whenever he would have a DNF or a bad result, I constantly played him on my fantasy team in that situation, because that he's going to respond. He always he's never gives up. He's never truly defeated. He always responds, no matter how the previous weekend went.
Yep. And props to you. You kicked my ass this year in fantasy. You got somewhere along the line. I was still fighting, and then I looked at your team and I saw you'd gotten Pramac as your team, and you still had enough money to have like Martin and Marquez or something like that as your riders, and I was like, all right, I just gave up. It was over. And Yamaha R6 rider, I don't even know who that is, but I think he won Greg's garage too.
Yeah, that dude was tearing it up, man. Whoever that is, drop your name in the comments.
If he's paying attention, I think Greg owes you an Arai helmet, by the way. So you should check in on that.
Yeah,
so we were trying to keep this to about 20 minutes. So
about 10 minutes. 10 minutes left.
Not quite.
Got about 10 minutes left. Then.
Who was your in a positive way biggest surprise this year, or what team, or whatever? What was your, in a good way, biggest surprise?
Biggest surprise for me, I had to think about this a little bit when you asked me this when we were doing our pre-show kind of brief thing, because there was a lot that went on this season. But biggest surprise, I think, is I got to go with Marc Marquez on the Gresini bike. I have to. We talked about him before the beginning of the season, and we said like it can go one of two ways. But it completely depended on like which Mark Marquez we got, which version of him we would see racing this year, and we got the old man Mark Marquez. We got the more mature Mark Marquez, who's not suffering from the Pedro Acosta push syndrome, but he understood that this season would be about learning the bike, would be about getting back up to speed, getting comfortable again, getting his confidence back in the bike and the front end and in the tires. And throughout him changing his mentality and doing that, he actually finished the season in third overall. He beat Enea Bastianini for third. Uh, I mean, just barely. He just barely squeaked by him. Um, and it came down to the last race of the season too, but he did it. So I say biggest surprise because with Mark, I mean, there was a lot of people that wanted to see him fail. Uh, it could have went either way with him. I mean, he coming into this team was even considering getting out of motorcycle racing altogether. And then throughout the course of a season, we've seen him get on a brand new bike, challenge for the title. We've seen him get race wins. Um, just has been consistent.
That's the
all
untouchable, untouchable GP24.
Yeah, the untouchable duo. He beat the GP24 that Bastianini was riding for one. We can't sleep on that either. Pretty much strong everywhere. Confidence is there. And then the biggest shocker is that he boots Jorge Martin from an almost given factory spot with the Ducati factory team. So I don't think there's anybody on earth that could have predicted that. I mean, like I said, even us when we talked about it, we said these are the possibilities. But we don't know what's going to happen. But we said these are the possibilities. But nobody could have. There's no way anybody could have predicted that Marc Marquez would be back. And then next season, if you don't think he's going to be in the title fight with Bagnaia, then man, people have another thing coming if they don't think he's going to be right there all season. But yeah, biggest surprise for me. Yeah, go ahead.
I just checked. Marquez scored 296 more points this year than he did last year.
It's unreal, right? It's unreal.
I mean, that's
like I said, the
mental.
trifecta. There's the bike. He's got the skill. The luck's coming now because he's in the factory team now. So yeah, biggest surprise. I definitely got to go with Marc Marquez and his switch to the Gresini racing team. Unreal. What about you?
So mine's a little less exciting than Marc Marquez, but in a positive way, my biggest surprise this year, especially the second half of the season, was Johan Zarco. And looking at the numbers, both Zarco and Nakagami beat both factory Honda riders. Zarco, I think, had like 55 points, I think it was, at the end of the year. But more impressively than his point total, because I think the bike would fade, was I think Zarco was the only Honda rider to ever make it into Q2 this year. And I could be wrong, but I think he made it directly in a couple times.
He did.
Or maybe...
Yeah, he did.
Maybe he didn't at all. I don't know. But he was the only one we were even talking about all year long. You're watching the FP sessions, you're watching qualifying, and Zarco's name kept coming up. And the only time we talked about Mir was when he was in the dirt. The only time we talked about Nakagami was when he announced his retirement. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know who this Marini guy is anymore. I don't know that I heard his name all year long. So
biggest loser for sure.
Zarco definitely was the only one doing anything on the Honda this year. And as someone that, so many people had basically written off, I was impressed by what he did. I mean, Danny Pedrosa had half as many points as Marini this year. Paul Espargaro, I think, only entered one weekend and almost beat Marini in the final standings. So, as we all know, the Honda is currently a turd, but Zarco is still doing some work on that.
Yeah.
So, and then oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we knew he was good, and you would assume that he would be pretty much stepping into a test rider role, hopping on Honda. Then the guy just freaking turns around and just smashes the factory team, and
He's the top
what?
guy.
Yeah, you're like, dude, what? You thought? I mean,
I think
I really thought, yeah, he was moonlighting, like going on to the Honda squad, but yeah, he's still hungry, man. Like I said, these guys don't give up.
Yeah, he beat the two factory riders combined by 20 points in the World Championship.
Sad, right?
So, yeah, I totally agree. I thought Zarco was going over there as a development guy. He's ridden Yamahas, he's ridden Ducatis, he's ridden everything. Actually, he started on the Honda way back when. Moto 2 world champion. Totally thought they took him over there because he is the perfect test guy. And then, yeah, like you say, he goes on to beat all of them. So, so quickly we'll hit the biggest surprise in a bad way. And for me, this year, without a doubt, it was Marco Bezzecchi. I mean, what happened to him? He went from 3rd in the World Championship to 12th. He was riding last year's World Championship bike. And, the season started, he was complaining of the same front end issues that Pecco had at the beginning of 23. And it just seems like he never figured it out. Like, I think he got one podium all year. And I believe it was a sprint race. It wasn't even a Sunday.
Yeah, he just couldn't gel with the bike, is what the reports were saying. I mean, he's just struggling trying to understand it. I don't know where that issue comes from, because in the past we've seen Bezzecchi have like dominant wins. I mean, we
Yeah.
have seen him, be consistent. I mean, he carried my fantasy team 2 seasons ago on the Ducati, and I thought,
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be the next top guy for sure. I was like, man, he's consistent, he's getting it done. And then this season, I don't know what it was, but he just could not get dialed in, and that was completely unexpected. But it still didn't stop him from getting a factory ride next season.
Yeah.
So I guess there's that.
But it's like total opposite. Now Marquez went from Honda to Ducati, but he like almost tripled his points total. And then Bezzecchi, just going from the GP22 to the GP23, he did less than half of the points he did in 2023 this year. I mean, 3rd in the World Championship to 12th, and you're still on a Ducati. I mean, that hurts.
Yeah, like I said, I can't explain that one, because the Ducati iterations are supposed to. I mean, you still get that big jump between 23, 24 in certain scenarios. But the bikes, I mean, the DNA is still there for the most part, right? I mean, he should still be doing better than what he's doing.
Yeah,
there should have been an adjustment that would have happened, but I just don't know if they can't find a setting for him that he likes. I mean, I don't know. But he's jumping ship, and all reports are saying that he does feel comfortable on the Aprilia now. So, maybe his style might gel with that bike. We'll see next season.
Yep. So what's your bad surprise or negative surprise?
Oh man, I almost don't want to say it, but I feel like we have to, being Americans and all. But Trackhouse Racing, man. Trackhouse Racing.
Yeah.
Can you guess where they finished in the team standings? Where would you guess? No cheating.
Oh.
I see you clicking over there. No cheating. Where do you think they finished?
Shoot, they lost Oliveira for a while. 2nd to last.
So they beat LCR and Repsol Honda in the points. So they finished.
Oh, okay.
They finished 9th overall. So they still beat Honda, but Trackhouse Racing. And I mean, I'll give them some leeway. I mean, new team, right? Getting settled in. But it seems like they just could not get completely comfortable with the season. I mean, we were seeing mistakes, issues with the bikes, and I mean the riders, Miguel Oliveira and Raul Fernandez. I mean, were they even on the track? track, man, if they weren't crashing, like, were they there?
They almost beat Yamaha though. They were
Man,
3 points shy of Yamaha.
yeah, almost got but still, but Yamaha's pretty much a one rider team
Yep. Yeah.
too. So with Quattararo,
I thought you were gonna say the biggest disappointment with them was not hiring Roberts
we could
for
talk
a
about
for
that
a team
too.
that keeps preaching that they want to grow American
Oh,
racing to then all of a sudden when they have a candidate that's sitting right there to not not practice what they preach. That was kind of disappointing.
I mean, reading in between the lines on that one too. If you remember, Roberts was offered the Aprilia factory seat with Aprilia a couple years ago now, and he declined to stay in Moto 2, which I will agree that at the time that was a good call because Aprilia was really struggling then, and with him declining that seat, they went on to get Maverick Vinales. So Maverick Vinales got the would-be seat for Joe Roberts, but I would assume that there were some hurt feelings with that situation. It's just I think just tragic that the team would well the B team would go on to be owned, by by Trackhouse Racing, the American team, who you would assume that they would want Joe Roberts, but I would also assume that word came down from Aprilia like, hey, we tried to give this guy a shot. I mean, Aprilia is all about family over there and taking care of the riders and treating them like royalty, and I'm sure somebody got rubbed a certain way, man. If you asked me, and they were like, yeah, I don't think they're like, yeah, I don't think we're gonna give him another shot. But yeah, I just say I'm just surprised by them just because they didn't really accomplish anything this first season. Their two riders didn't do a whole lot. Raul Fernandez got re-signed for next season. Why?
He has those
Why? What are we
flashes
doing?
of brilliance where he's all of a sudden qualifying on like the second row, but then he chucks it down the road. So it didn't net anything in the end anyway.
Yeah, I don't get it, but they stuck with him. And then they have oh gosh, I'm definitely gonna blank out on his name now.
Ayagura.
Orgura, who I mean, definitely he could be a surpriser in the future for sure. And I have no issues with giving him that seat for sure. I mean, that's what we want to see is guys coming up and getting seats.
Yeah.
Um and seeing what they can do. And so, hopefully he can get some momentum going on that bike, and then they're going to have the factory team with Martin now and Bezecchi. So hopefully Aprilia can get some things going, and some of that can trickle down to Trackhouse. But yeah, this year I thought Trackhouse would finish a lot stronger. Despite having Miguel Oliveira, who's been around forever at this point now, and Raul Fernandez, who we thought was going to be the next freaking one of the next superstars too, but it just hadn't panned out for him. But yeah, that's why I would throw Trackhouse out there. So
Yeah, and
hopefully they can come back
I'm
next
trying
season.
we're already 13 minutes over our 20-minute goal, but that's
Yep.
better than the normal 30 minutes over we go. But so I'm not trying to go too far down into the weeds, but I am glad that we've got 3 rookies this year. I think Ducati jumped the gun signing Aldeguer for 2 years, but that's a whole podcast on its own. Um, but I'm glad we've got 3 rookies this year. I think MotoGP for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so seems to have this problem with holding on to riders who are underperforming,
Yep.
um, and not giving rookies a chance. And I I think everyone's so busy waiting for the next Marquez, um, that they're not paying attention to what else is out there. Like when Pecco got brought in, he was not what anyone thought was the next Marquez, and then he went on to win 2 in a row. Um, Same with Martin. These guys didn't come in straight to a factory ride. They they weren't heralded as the next champion before they even got there. But I think everyone is so locked in on not wanting to sign anyone new to a long-term contract because they're afraid they're going to miss the next Marquez, that it's maybe hindering the development of some of these younger riders. But that's a whole other thing. We got 3 rookies coming this year. I don't know if you watched the testing. I kind of had it on the background at work yesterday. All 3 rookies crashed. So they got that out of the way nice and early. But yeah, we'll come up with some more stuff to talk about coming into the new season. Because there is a lot going on this year with rider changes and rookies and all that stuff. So, and then we've got the new motors coming in a couple years. I think they're doing a motor freeze for 2026 and then new motors in 2027. So the tables could turn. This whole new motor setup could completely change the guard out, and there's a lot going on right now.
Yep, and I'm wondering if, just like real quick, if we should take a quick second to do a sort of quick prediction for next season, or should we just save that for the next video? We're at 35 minutes now.
We should save that so we have some
All
time
right.
to discuss some of the next season topics a little more.
Gotcha. We'll save that then for everybody that's watching. That'll be the next
Maybe we'll
installment.
set that for after the next test or something like that.
Sweet. But yeah, all in all, Jorge Martin got it done. Great season, great racing
did.
all the way through. Next season, it's only going to get better. Anything else, man?
Yep. No, I mean, just looking forward to next year as always.
Looking forward to it. All right. Well, hopefully you guys found this entertaining. Just remember to like and subscribe to the video. That always helps us out. And join the Facebook page too. We're always up on the Facebook page talking. If you got any questions, you can leave them in the comments, or you can talk to us directly on the Facebook page. We're on there daily, almost hourly on there.
The track day meetups, we post that stuff on there. All sorts of stuff. So it's not just racing 24/7.
Yep. Just most of, maybe like
20,
23/7.
22 and a half, 7.
Yeah. But yeah, man, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks.